I was expecting some applause, but that's okay. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, I was sick, and then my husband got sick, and he had to take over my office and work from home for 10 days. So I had no access to anything. He works like 12-hour days. So yeah, so today I wanted to talk about books that were sent to me from you guys. So these were either authors that sent them to me themselves, or I don't know, whomever works in their publishing circle sent them to me. Let's just get into it. So if you guys want to send me anything, I'm gonna have at the end of this video talk a little bit about my PO box and stuff like that, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. And if not, let's just talk about these books. These are always a little bit challenging because every book is so different going into it. I always go in kind of nervous, like I don't know what this is gonna be, and then I'm always blown away by these books. So just because they're different from one another doesn't necessarily mean that they're just for different people, right? They're different for a different audience. But I will be giving you my full honest opinion of these books, and let's get into it. I will also leave all of the author information down below. I am a huge fan of supporting independent authors or small authors, and I think that it's really important to do that. So that is why I like making these videos on my channel. This is the second video I've made, so I'll leave the first one down below if you're interested in watching that. And let's kind of get into it. So the first book, and these are just in order of how I received them and read them. So the first book is called For Rye, and this one is by Gavin Gardner. And wow, okay, extremely well written. Wow, it holds your attention the entire time. You're not bored reading it. Well, let me tell you, I guess, what it's about, and then we'll get into the other thing. So it's about a woman named Renata, and she's forced to return to her hometown for the first time in decades because her mother was brutally murdered. So you think that that's what the whole story is about, is her kind of figuring out who killed her mother. But it turns out to be so much more than that. We get to learn about her childhood growing up. Her father is still alive and they have a very tumultuous relationship. And so we get little snippets of her past. The thing that I really loved about this story is that the author has a great way of like manipulating how you feel about these characters. So there are characters where you're like, okay, I like this one. And then at the end you're like, do I like any of them? You know what I mean? But then you also have a degree of like feeling bad for them in certain situations, and it's a very confusing book, and I like books like that where the characters are not just blatantly good or blatantly evil, because I feel like everybody has a mixture of both inside of them. Tons of character development in here, and it is slow to unravel events, but it's not boring. And I think the character development is important for the second half of the book, so it's not just there for no reason. This one I feel like is written as like a 1950s film noir. That's how I felt reading it. I felt like the timeline was a little ambiguous, and maybe there were certain things that I didn't pick up on. Gavin, if you are here, let me know if that's like an okay assumption, or if I'm like way off base here. That's kind of how it reads. Renata, when she gets to town, meets a detective who knew her when she was a child, and he's like, I promise I'll help you to figure out who killed your mom. So I don't know, I feel it, like for me it was a little film noir-y. I feel like if you like film noir, you would like this book. And then I wrote that it's violent at times, but it's not too crazy and gory. And then I got to the second half of the book. It's such an interesting, intricate story, and it sucks because, like, obviously I don't want to give too much away because I want you guys to be able to read it and experience it the way that I did. But her childhood was extremely brutal. Her father was just absolutely ruthless, and we kind of get to the bottom of like their relationship. The purpose of the book pivots, and the second half is very brutal. So it's just funny. I'm like, okay, it's not too brutal, and then I got to the second half of the book and I'm like, okay, it's pretty brutal, yeah. So it's pretty gory, it's pretty intense. The ending is fantastic. It's truly just a great ending, and I honestly would not have wanted it any other way. I think the ending is absolutely perfect. I'm really excited to see other work from Gavin because this book is extremely well written. The characters are very well rounded. I mean, you can tell that he loves the genre, you know what I mean? Not at all what I was expecting, and I really loved every minute of it. Excellent novel, fantastic. Oh, and I'll put in a little video right now of me getting this. So I got this from my PO box, and it was wrapped in this like fantastic bloody paper, and I got to open it, and I was just like, I don't know, I feel like this is somebody who just loves the genre, and I love to see it because I'm obviously a huge horror fan as well. So that is For Rye. Fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much to all the authors for sending me their books. It is really like an honor to be able to read somebody's book that they spent so much time on. So the next one that we have here is called Guised Passage. This one is by James L. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. You know what, I'm just gonna put it up on the screen. But this book is by James. This is called Guised Passage. And also I will say too is that like the covers for these are perfect and they relate to the story. This one I also love the like soft matte front cover of, but I like that you can look at a book and kind of know what it's about. This one has a few people in a canyon and it's like getting dark and gloomy. Guised Passage. Okay, so this one is about 4 hikers that run into a group from a university that are studying the indigenous people of the area. Those people are completely disrespectful and they go into a canyon where they were forbidden to go into, but they don't really have information as to why they were forbidden to go into the canyon. They just know that the people do not want them to go there. And the 4 girls, the 4 hikers, they're friends from college and they actually go to hike in this area, see tents down below, and then just kind of like hike down to join them to see if they're nice and they can join them. So the girls aren't intentionally being disrespectful the way that some of the members from the university are, but they get sucked into obviously everything that happens. So the story goes back and forth to various groups and then various viewpoints, various people from each of those groups, and we get small snippets of the characters themselves. I really like this because especially the 4 girls, from the beginning, there's like kind of the odd duckling where you're like, okay, she's the one that's like filled with anxiety and she never wants to do anything. And then slowly as the book unravels, you do get more character development from each of the girls and they do become their own characters, as well as the people in the university, which is hard to do in a short book. So I did like that. In this, they are in the canyon and they become actually trapped in the canyon, and so they are trying to leave and make it out, but some force, it seems, is after them and they don't quite know what it is. Again, it's hard when I do these reviews, I don't want to give too much away. I will say that I did Google the indigenous people, and they are like real indigenous people, so it seems like the writer did some research, which is really cool. There's also some snippets of mythology in there, and so I didn't look too far into it, but I'm assuming that this writer, you know, did some research and found like actual mythology from these people, and I just think that's really cool. So if you like a little bit of like history involved in your stories and to learn about like mythology and things like that, I think that this is a good story to read. Some of the dialogue wasn't two-sided, which was, I mean, that's interesting, right? That's an interesting choice in a book. But here's the thing, the book is so fast-paced that if you're a person who needs that exposition and needs that like visceral description, there is definitely some of that in here, but it's definitely not like The Ruins, for example, where they're on top of these ruins and they're stuck for days and like you can see how thirsty they are, you can feel it. So I think people that like super fast paced, it's definitely more of like an adventure-ish story. People who like fast paced adventure, just like get to the gore scenes, would like this book. I think he did a good job of writing everything in the story to fit in a book without it being like too long. So it just depends on what kind of writing style you like. People that like fast pace would definitely like this. That's what I'm trying to say. But again, there's not a ton of that like visceral description. They're thirsty, they're hungry, they're fearful. You don't really get a ton of that. So again, it's just whatever you prefer. This was my favorite part. Eyes wide open, pupils dilated fully, brains hunting for any movement, any color, finding none. Then the world exploded. A jagged bolt of lightning scorched the blackness. Then they all screamed, including Drake. In the blinding millisecond, Brooke was sure she saw a figure in the clearing. So like, not to say that there's no description at all, but it is very fast paced and there's a lot that happens in these, you know, few hundred pages. And then there are also some really cool scenes in here that, you know, when you have a group of friends and something bad could potentially happen to them and you're like, okay, but they'll figure it out. Like, they'll get through this. This book takes no prisoners. Everyone involved is just fair game in this book. And so I did like that. There is some, you know, gory scenes in here and stuff like that. And yeah, that's this one. Guised Passage. So this one I would say if you like to learn a little bit more about the culture of the indigenous people, why they're there, you know, more of like an adventure book. They go on this territory that they're not supposed to go to and then bad stuff goes down. That is definitely who would like this book. Fast paced, it doesn't go into like pages of description or pages of dialogue or anything like that. So if you like things more fast-paced, I think you would like this. Did I say who would like this book? For Rye, I think people who really like character development, really like stories all coming together and kind of tying loose ends would like this. And I think people who like film noir, but I don't really have a specific reason as to why. That's just how I feel. Okay, so the third book that I read was called The Ragged. And this one was by Brett Shoemaker. This one was so fun too. I mean, all of these, it really is an honor to be able to read other people's books that they've worked so hard on. So this one is about a couple. So the man in the relationship, Andrew, goes to his grandpa's funeral. He brings his wife along with him. And then they have to go to his grandpa's house because they got it. He doesn't have a lot of family left over. And so he ends up inheriting the property. They kind of want to go through and sell what they can and then just kind of auction off the house. They don't want to live there or anything. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And his grandpa was a bit of, he definitely was more isolated. He kind of kept to himself. And so they end up going to the funeral. They go back to the house, and Andrew runs into a friend actually at the funeral that he had for a while since he was a teen. And so they go back to the house and weird things start happening. And at first, I think the reader doesn't quite know if it's maybe supernatural, because there definitely seem to be supernatural things that go on, or if it's maybe just like Andrew reliving his childhood and the trauma of being in a place that, I mean, his grandpa was kind of odd and like strict in certain ways and did things that would maybe be considered not good to Andrew when he was younger. And so the reader doesn't really know what's going on quite yet. They stay in the house for a while. They don't have a ton of money to just waste on living in a hotel for weeks on end while they clean the place out. And while they're doing this, Andrew actually finds a journal from his grandfather. He starts reading it slowly while they're going throughout the house. So it's a really interesting juxtaposition between the grandpa's point of view and then Andrew's point of view. It's just a really well-written story, really fun and engaging, and it's kind of different from both of these because there's not a crazy amount of just character development, and then there's not just a crazy amount of just like scene after scene. It's kind of in the middle of the two, where we definitely get to know these characters through their actions, and definitely Andrew's past, him more so than his wife. But it is pretty fast paced, and they do keep you busy with the things that they're doing, you know what I mean? And like the events that take place. So I would say it's kind of in the middle of those two stories. As you go along, the thing is I can't give too much away because I want you guys to experience it the way that I did, but it's really, really, really cool. They start to like see things in the cornfield and they don't quite know if they're staying in this creepy place and they don't know, and they're also having weird dreams and they're just not sure really what's going on. Until they do, right? So at the end, you definitely get a definitive, this is what's happening. It's not ambiguous at all. You get to learn what happened, and the way that it unfolds is just so fun. It really was a fantastic story to read, and just creepy. Like this one I would say is more just creepy. For Rye, I would say is more bloody, and then Guy's Passage, I would say, is more like adventure horror. So Brett actually has a YouTube channel where he reads scary stories, and I've got to tell you, he has got like the perfect voice, the perfect tone, the perfect way of reading stories that just keeps you fully engaged. And actually The Ragged is on his YouTube channel, so you can listen to it there, which I listened to it and read at the same time. And I think this is cool because you can listen to a chapter and be like, okay, I want to support this author, I'm gonna go buy his book. Or you can listen to the story and be like, well, I loved that, so now I can, support him and buy other stories from him, because he does have a few other books which I'm really interested to check out as well. So I will leave his YouTube channel down below. So yeah, that's The Ragged. This one, I loved the ending. I really liked the way that it went. Remember I said it could be paranormal, it could not. I'm not gonna tell you what actually ends up happening, but I really love the way that it did end, and I think the way that it did end makes it creepier than if it were to lean toward the other way. Yeah, really fun. So definitely all very different stories for different types of readers. So it just kind of depends on what you like reading. I hope I did these justice and talked about them as accurately as I could. It has been a while since I've read these, and I do apologize for how long it's taken me, but the last few months have been pretty rough. But so thankful for all of you who have sent me books. And now let me just kind of give you a, if you want to send me books to my P.O. box kind of spiel really quickly. I will have my P.O. box linked down below, and if you do want to send your book, I would love to see it. But here's the thing. I only read about 50 books a year. I'm a pretty slow reader, and so I definitely can't get through a crazy amount of these. I think what I'll end up doing is like a monthly P.O. box haul or unboxing kind of thing of whoever sends their story to me, and then that way I can give the breakdown of what it's about on the back, you know, any books that like specifically stand out to me or anything like that. And that way it introduces people to the story, because a lot of these, I mean, these are fantastic books, and a lot of them it's just that people don't have access to them the way that they do like a Stephen King book, which is why I have such a passion for reading smaller authors and talking about them, even though I do have a teeny tiny channel. But I don't know how many I'll actually get through reading, especially in like a year's time. I definitely want to pick up one every few months, and I'll definitely keep doing videos on these, but I think the big main thing is I'll do an unboxing and at least show them on my channel. That's what I'm thinking. So if you're fine with that, then yeah, definitely send it my way. If you are adamant that I read the book, I just can't promise when I'll get to it. And especially, I mean, these people sent me their books in like September, October, and then, sorry, my camera died. But yeah, they sent these books to me forever ago, and then, you know, life happens and I'm unable to film for a few months. So I don't really want to be stuck on a time limit either. There are so many books that I have and I've recently purchased that I want to read too. So I'll kind of incorporate them as I go along. At any rate, the P.O. box is down there if you want it. And if not, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much to each of the authors for sending me their work. All of their stuff is linked down below, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys!